Alright, so I got my food here from Walmart. It's $3.98 for some hot wings and jalapeno peppers. Some of you might find this filling, but for me, I think I'm going to need some rice. So I'm planning on cooking up some white rice with this. It's kind of bad because I'm going to have to run the car stationary, which is using up gasoline. But what it's going to do is actually generate some heat. So it'll make my vehicle kind of hot because I'm going to be using a 300-watt rice cooker to cook up some rice. So it'll actually make it hot inside the vehicle, which can be pretty good. Hopefully the heat will kind of retain a little bit, even though by nighttime, like a couple hours later, it's probably going to be freezing cold inside my van. So what I'm getting ready to do right now is head over towards Sporting Goods, just to do a little episode here to talk about staying warm inside a van, especially with limited budget. If you're like me inside a just converted minivan, you probably haven't padded your, insulated your vehicle other than what's already there with the vehicle, what was built. I don't bother to insulate, I just use what's already there. It makes the van function and look like a normal van. And I think it has pretty good padding and whatnot. But you can make it a little bit warmer inside by taking some strategies. Okay? The biggest strategy that I can recommend is to do what hikers, mountain climbers do. They face like sub-zero degrees. Yeah, they face like freezing weather on a mountain with winds blowing. And they've been doing this for a long time and are able to survive up there and function and whatnot. So surely, if they can, if mountain climbers and whatnot, campers up in the mountains with the snow and the wind and sub-zero temperatures can survive, surely it should be a lot easier for someone living in a van that has metal and insulation and whatnot all around them. So this is pretty weird. An inflator, huh? Anyhow, we're over by the hardware section. I'm looking for Sporting Goods, and here we are. So the reason we came to Sporting Goods is to look at options, tools and supplies and things that can help with survival living in a van in the cold. I know a lot of you already know much of this, but I think the easiest thing to do, I wonder if these are sub-zero. It looks like they got sleeping bags here. Yes. Okay, this is zipperless cool weather sleeping bag designed for 40 degrees Fahrenheit right here. So something like this would actually be suitable for where I am. The temperature is expected to go down to the 40s, so even something like this, like these mummy type style ones, tend to be a lot warmer. I wonder how much this one goes down to. You notice on sleeping bags, they have ratings on them that tell how cold they go. These here are rated at 40 degrees. And they are $25. So if you're not in like sub-zero, you're not in like totally frozen, like below that, these $25 sleeping bags are more than adequate. And actually, if you do layers, like you wear warm clothes, these are more expensive here. These are $34. So I'm willing to bet these may be designed for even colder. I'll say 40 here, just different styles. Ah, here's one. This one here says it'll take you down to 10 degrees Fahrenheit. So something like this style right here, it says cold weather mummy sleeping bag. This is what I would actually recommend. It's meant for going down to 10 degrees. So if you're in weather like 80 degrees, I mean not 80 degrees, 40 degrees, this is actually very warm. So these mummy style sleeping bags are really good. And I think they're $35, $34, $44. So when you're shopping sleeping bags, that's the first line of defense. I think it's the cheapest for trying to make sure you, don't freeze to death. I would get something like this. Now, I'm not going to get it because I think I'm fine. I'm adequate for what I'm doing. You know, it's not expected to go below 40. So getting something like this would be perfect if you're in the van and able to have the insulation of the van and also generate the heat. Now, the other thing that's worth considering is basically making like a layer, you know, like going to sleep in layers, like wearing not pajamas, but like sweatshirts, sweatpants and whatnot, maybe even a jacket. So you have multiple layers that you can sleep in. Just keep in mind, if it gets too hot, you may get sweaty. So you want to, you know, be comfortable so that you are warm, but not to the point where it's like a sauna. But something that you can consider is like, I don't see it here, but they sell those reflective sheets, you know, those reflective blankets, emergency survival blankets. They do reflect heat back on you, so in a worst case scenario, you could, you know, wrap yourself in that and go into the bag. But what you could do conceivably is get something like this. This is like a survival blanket, which has that same stuff. This is like $11.76. So it's protective gear. And what you do is you wrap yourself in it. See how you wrap yourself around and it reflects your heat back because it has that reflective stuff. Here's this one has a cheaper blanket. See how it has the silver one in here? This is $5. So something like that can be used. Now what I would do is actually, because you're inside a van, can you imagine if you coated like cardboard or something with this and made like sort of like a tent? Or you know, to block your windows and whatnot, you can bounce the heat inside back to yourself. So that's a potential thing you can do, is like get a small little tent, like see this survival reflective tent. See, it has the silver stuff that reflects heat. This is $8. So you could probably easily set up something like that inside your van. So it's even better than these people sleeping outside where they're exposed to the wind and the elements. You're inside a van, it's already blocking the wind. And by having the heat come back, you should stay fairly warm, especially if you're in one of those sub-zero sleeping bags. Here it is if you want to go ultimate cheap. It's $3 for one of these emergency blankets. Just cover the inside of your walls, you know, with this stuff. Maybe make a little tent out of it. And it will bounce your heat back. And if you're sleeping inside one of those cocoon type, you know, sub-zero sleeping bags, you should be okay without having to heat up your whole vehicle. Now, the other option is to use the Mr. Buddy heater, which runs off propane. So some people use those with much success. Me personally, I don't think I would get one because I like, you know, to have, I don't want to have a system that's dedicated to just heating. Now, some people actually cook on those Mr. Buddy heaters, so then they become a lot more useful. But what you can do is get like a propane cooking system and just use that to cook, and maybe even heat up like water and let it retain the heat to hold the heat while at night, you know, it slowly releases it. But you have to make sure that when you're running stuff like you're burning things like the propane systems, even this, you have to have your windows and stuff open enough that the air blows out the carbon monoxide, because you can get carbon monoxide poisoning, and that can actually kill you while you sleep. You don't even know that it's affecting you because you just feel sleepy. So I don't really like this. I don't like propane systems. But if I was really in a cold place, I might consider getting a propane stove type system and using it, you know, to even just heat up the air briefly with the windows, you know, somewhat cracked open, and then shut it off. I would not leave it on while I was sleeping. And definitely I would have a carbon monoxide detector with fresh batteries and stuff to make sure that if something happened, you know, it would wake me up, hopefully. But you could also try butane systems. But basically, you're just using the heat to heat up the air inside the van. And then that will stay warm a while. But like I said, to extend the heat, you could conceivably boil water and, you know, put a lid on it. And then just put it somewhere where you're not going to spill it and burn yourself. But it'll slowly release the heat while you're sleeping. And then if you get really cold, you probably wake up and you can turn on the Mr. Buddy or the propane or butane cooking system and heat up the air again for like 10 minutes, 5 minutes. And then just make sure the windows are adequately ventilated when you're doing that. And that should help to retain the heat. But if you can at all, I would prefer to use something like the sleeping bag system where you're cocooned in, you're keeping your own body heat. And the reason for that is we know that works. And you're not generating carbon monoxide, which can kill you. The people who go hiking, who go camping out on the mountaintops and whatnot, they use, really high-end sub-zero sleeping bags and whatnot, and it keeps them adequately warm. So if they're able to survive out there on the mountain ledge or whatever with winds blowing at them with just a sleeping bag or a tent and a sleeping bag, surely you're going to be all right inside your van, which is blocking the wind and whatnot. So I hope you found these ideas useful. Myself, I'm just going to be wearing layers. See how I have my jacket and whatnot. That's how I plan on sleeping, is with jackets, sweatpants, and my sleeping bag, which isn't even sub-zero. I think my sleeping bag is rated at 40 or even 50 degrees, maybe even 60. But I also have a sleeping bag and I have a comforter. So I'm planning on doing layers. That way if it gets too hot, I can remove a layer. If it gets cold, I can put on another layer. And I'm still planning on sleeping with my windows open, so it's vented, so I get some circulation in there. Don't want to have moisture collecting, and then next thing you know, my van's all wet inside. But this will be my first day trying to sleep out in 40 degrees. I do have the portable heater, but I am pretty sure it's going to run out. I tried running it and it ran for like half a minute or 1 minute, and the system went through the battery. So using an electric 120 volt space heater won't work unless I can keep my engine running, or I have access to a 120 volt power outlet where I can plug in, if you're parked at a friend's house or something. So, another thing that you can consider, but I wouldn't even spend the money on it, is to get a tent, a small little tent like this one here. It's a one-person backpacking tent. Do you notice how it's like a cocoon type shape? Can you imagine being inside that and then having the silver stuff? I guess it's called mylar, that will reflect your heat back. So you could have one of these with the mylar coated on the inside, and that'll bounce your heat in. So what you're doing is you're using your own body heat to stay warm, versus trying to insulate the whole van. Yeah. All you're insulating is the area that you're actually sleeping. Now, we're over at Walmart, so let's take a look at their supplies and the kind of sleeping bags they have. Here's one as low as $8, and let's take a look at how strong or not strong it is, or, as far as what it can handle. See, this one's rated at 50 degrees Fahrenheit, which I think is probably my sleeping bag, cheapo one. And this $14 one is also 50 degrees. This is small though. So these are meant for like warmer temperatures. And so when you're shopping sleeping bags, here's one rated at, what does it say? This is 40 degrees. And they tend to get more expensive as you go towards stuff that's designed for colder and colder temperatures. I don't know what that says, something 9. This one says minus. Look at this one here. This is $77 for this. This one is rated for minus. No, that's Celsius. So it's rated at 25 degrees Fahrenheit. So here's one at 20 degrees Fahrenheit for $50. So all sorts of sleeping bags. They have it here for those of you who are planning on going into cold climates. And that's your first line of defense, I think, is a very good sleeping bag. If I find that my cheapy one that I have right now, which is probably rated at 50, I got like really cheap sleeping bags. If that's not warm enough, I may have to upgrade. And if I upgrade, I'm probably going to pick one of these that go to like 20 degrees or so. But they tend to be like mummy type sleeping bags. And then if that wasn't adequate, I would make a little tent, survival tent inside using the Reflectix or whatever, not Reflectix, but the Mylar type stuff to bounce the heat back at myself. I hope you guys found this video informative and helpful, and hopefully these tips will help you to stay warm. I do think about each and every one of you, especially those of you who are out in extreme cold right now. I feel a little bit sad for you, but I'm hoping that you know how to survive out there. If not, you can get out of there. That's one of the benefits of living in a van. Head on south. It's a little bit cold here in Florida, but I think 40 degrees is a lot warmer than 5 degrees. So until next time, everybody, stay warm, stay safe. You're all in my thoughts and prayers. Take care now.